Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, sentient beings, and welcome to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. Seth, you look startled.
That's what I was going for. I was like, hello? It was a bit. You're not supposed to point out the bit. The audience is supposed to like it.
Well, yes, but I thought, it's been long enough. I can say it. and not only do we welcome sentient entities from around the galaxy, but we're also going to welcome non-sentient entities that may be watching our show and not understanding it because they're not really sentient. I mean, somebody could be watching us on their computer at home via YouTube with their dog, and their dog is enjoying the show but not really understanding what it's all about. So welcome to you, canines and felines. And if anybody has a pig or a bird, welcome to them too. Anyway, I'm Bill.
I'm Linda.
I'm Charles.
I'm Seth.
And I'm Stu.
And on this particular episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast, we are going to be talking about the Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Wee-oo.
So I've seen it. Linda's seen it. Stu, you've seen it?
Oh, yes.
Has anyone else seen it?
No, I missed it.
I'd have to go to movies to see a movie.
That's true.
And they pulled it from my theaters that I usually go to. So I missed my window.
That's another
Charles,
thing.
Charles,
Can I ask why they only have like some decent movies for like 2 weeks at a main theater, and then it's like
Especially it's a multi-screen, yeah. So
I know.
I don't know. They're both multi-screens out west here.
That's not right.
I mean, there can't be that many movies coming out. I mean,
I told us for Barbie. I don't know.
You think at this point they'd be staggering movies a little bit with the writer's strike going on, knowing that there's going to be a dearth of new content for some period of time.
Exactly.
I saw a story that that might be sinking into people like Bob Iger.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of his statements are sounding a lot less braggadocio than they were at the beginning of the strike.
Really? What's changed?
Well, it's gone from the strike is saving.
No,
us.
but I mean, what changed his view?
Oh, I imagine it's the reality that they're going to have a great big dry spell coming up. Because the longer the strike goes on, the longer the dry spell goes on.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a news story today that Dune got pushed back to 2024.
Really?
Yeah.
The second season of Foundation has debuted, and we're going to watch that. But we have decided to take our time and instead go back and start and rewatch the first season, and take our time with it because obviously it's going to be a period of time before season 3 would come out. So
Right.
At this point, we're under no hurry to watch new content as it comes out. It's better to kind of delay it, I think.
Yeah, there's I don't know the degree to it how it will affect it, but the new season of American Horror Story is still recording with Scabs, and I don't know how that will affect the actual season. Like, I'm guessing there will be
Seth, is that scab actors or scab writers or both?
I just know that it's some scab actors. I don't know if it's scab writers. It may have already been written, and they were just like, okay, it's written.
Yeah, could
We'll
be.
find people to play it.
Crazy.
Yeah, I can see that.
And, I mean, American Horror Story is more of an ensemble show anyway, so it's maybe not surprising that they thought they could do it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think, was it Paris Hilton that I saw as one of the people in this season? Or no?
Oh, dear God.
No, it was someone famous who, like, you're like, they're not an actor, they're just a famous person.
Well, some people don't need writers.
I guess. Yeah.
Because they can't act in the first
Yeah,
place.
I mean, we all know.
Well,
Writers would just be wasting talent at that point.
although now conversely, Seth, I will say that I would take a certain pleasure in seeing Paris Hilton disemboweled in a program like that.
You can see that on plenty of other movies.
Well, not the bowels. Other parts.
All right, then. So, Last Voyage of the Demeter.
On that
No, but before we leave the topic, though, now, Seth, what specifically have you heard from Mr. Iger that seemed to signal a softening in his story?
a change in tone from oh hey, this writer's strike is this strike is saving us money, to I'm very disappointed that our latest very generous offer has been rejected. It's going to lead to some really hard times for people coming up. And I think this was right after, or in the same news story that reported that Disney's stock had taken a serious hit that may or may not be connected to this, and the reality that there's not going to be a lot of money coming in.
Interesting.
It's like,
So
I think
they
it's
negotiating
from
with all the studios at the same time?
Say what?
Are they negotiating with all the studios at the same time?
They're negotiating with the AMMTP, I believe, or the AAMTP or AMMTP. It's basically the Producers Guild.
Okay.
As I understand things, I might be wildly wrong. This is not my area of expertise. I'm just following things I see in the news a bit. But yeah, they are negotiating with the Producers Guild, which I don't know how the whole business situation works and what guild works with what, but I mean, there are producers and they're the people who pay to make the movies happen. So that's who they're in. That's who I think the studios are. It's too early in the morning for me to try and explain a system that I don't understand very well.
Fair. All right. Well, let's jump into the Demeter.
Wildly wrong. I'll just stop.
Let's jump into the Demeter, and for that, I'm going to jump over to Stu. And Stu, do you want to give us a recap here, and we'll start before that, just to let everybody know that there may be spoilers here. So if you don't want to be spoiled, fair warning.
Sounds good.
On that note, Stu,
sounds good.
You're up.
I certainly enjoyed the film. In terms of the genesis of the film, if you've read Dracula, and if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. It's a fun read. It's a good book. Dracula, the novel, is put together in what is known as an epistolatory form, meaning every chapter is a text written by someone, by either by a character or by some other person who can account for the action. The first three chapters famously are the diary of the young solicitor who goes to visit Dracula to sell him an estate back in London. The fifth chapter is the captain's log of the ship Demeter that transported Dracula and his cargo from Transylvania, or from Bulgaria to be specific, to England. Which by the way, I've heard someone did a commentary on how much more efficiently that transport would have been done by rail in 1890. You know, if you want to go across Europe, you'd be a lot easier taking a railroad. But Stoker,
well, it'd be hard for the railroad for Dracula to get around and kill people.
Well, you think about it, every whistle stop you could get off. But again, this is Stoker taking dramatic license, obviously.
Yeah.
Because Stoker knew that. He knew I can have this scene, you know, because this is only this book is written only a few years after the Marie Celeste, where this idea of a ship under siege from some unknown entity is in people's minds. So he writes this really eerie chapter of the captain saying, this mate has disappeared. We don't know what happened to him, and someone else is gone, and now this man has been seen by my second mate, and then the next day I have seen him. He's on this ship. You know, builds this very eerie atmosphere. There is some unknown presence that he cannot encapsulate. He knows it's something that looks like a human is on this ship that is taking out his crew one by one. And it's this absolute creeping dread. It's one of the more effective chapters of the book. And by the time in the book anyway, by the time the Demeter comes to rest in England, wrecks on the coast, just like in the film. There's only one person left on the ship, and that's the captain. And he's tied himself to the steering wheel with a crucifix on his hands. And all they have is the log to go from and try and piece together what happened. And ominously enough, when the ship wrecks, this large dog comes bounding off out into the night.
Mm-hmm. And the captain's dead, tied to the wheel?
The captain's dead, tied to the wheel.
Yeah. So the cross didn't help him then.
Didn't help. Either that or he'd already been... I don't know if it is implied that Dracula actually got to him or the conditions of the voyage finally killed him. The weather, and everything else that they'd already been through.
Because we saw in the movie a couple of different points where a character had a rosary, and that rosary kind of made it through the hands of different people, but it didn't seem to stop Dracula in any way.
Right.
The person that had the rosary had no special immunity to Dracula because of that.
Yeah.
So, which I thought was interesting based on what we've seen in other movies and stuff where, a symbol of the cross or a rosary or something like that would be so repellent and repugnant to Dracula that he'd, fly off in anger.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think that really underlies a cultural shift. There was a time in 1897 when this came out that was something you could sell to a Victorian British population that was used to having a city full of churches that almost everyone attended, at least sporadically. And by the year 2023, that's now we're used to seeing vampires saying if you don't have true faith, they can just melt a cross right in front of you.
Right.
And that doesn't have the cultural currency anymore. So the filmmakers they played with that quite a bit. One thing that doesn't make it, and this has nothing to do with this film. I'm kind of digressing now, but one thing that's very prominent in the novel that almost never makes it to film, maybe a little bit in the Coppola version, is that in the novel, Van Helsing's main holy weapon of choice isn't the cross. It's a blessed wafer. It's the host.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and he does all kinds of stuff. He actually makes those into like a cock where he will like seal the tomb so the vampire can't get out because they can't get around the host. And that's something that either doesn't film real well or the producers by the 1930s figured, that just isn't going to sell to Protestant America.
Sure.
So you've got a good point there, Bill. That the familiar vampire apotropaics, the things that will allegedly kill a vampire, they don't seem to have much effect on this guy, and and you don't have a Van Helsing figure in this
No.
in this movie. Nobody really knows what they're doing.
But the sun is still purging of vampires. So,
yep.
And one of the things I liked about it specifically was that they have a child actor on the ship, a cute kid. What would you say? Probably 10, age 10, something like that.
9 or 10, yeah.
Yeah, and they have him and a couple of other characters. That woman that they brought back, or thought they had brought back. And as I'm watching the film, I'm thinking, okay, I can see where this is going. Somehow the kid's going to survive, maybe the woman's going to survive, and maybe that doctor's going to survive at the end. But I couldn't have been more wrong and pleased about it, in that it was, not pleased that the child died, or that the woman died, of course, but pleased that they didn't have plot armor, because they were, cute and everybody would be rooting for them, right?
Right.
They got the same treatment from the vampire that everybody else got. So
Hey, Bill was just rooting for Dracula.
well, that's probably true, Seth.
Kinda, yeah.
I mean, if Dracula doesn't win, you don't have a sequel. So there you go.
That's right.
Yeah,
And and I thought they set it up really nice for the sequel too.
Well, potentially, although the way that the performance of the film, I don't think is really going to precipitate one. But yeah, you are right though, because it really does subvert expectations very well. I mean, when the Romany woman comes tumbling out of one of the chests, and by the way, again, if you've read the book or seen some of the movies, the cargo of the Demeter in the novel anyway was 50 chests of earth, and those are substitute graves for Dracula in London. And in the novel, he ends up hiding them in these little locations all over the city. And that's part of the hunt for Dracula in the novel, is trying to find every single one of these boxes, because then he won't have anywhere to rest.
Yeah.
But the first box they try to open, out tumbles this Romany woman, and Dracula's been using her to feed.
Why has no one made a game out of that yet? That sounds like a hell of a good game.
Yeah. Find Dracula in the city of London. Yeah,
we have Seth. Well, we should play it sometime.
You should.
I've got it in my back seat as we speak.
Do you?
We can play it.
Horrified?
Yes.
Oh, you actually have to go around finding his
coffins.
His coffins? That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
It is.
Taking
game night.
Dracula hunting you the whole time?
Yes.
I like it.
It's a heck of a game. Yeah, in Horrified, yeah, that's one thing I love about the game Horrified, by the way, is that they draw from a lot of different sources. In Dracula, they really don't follow the movie; they follow the novel. For the Wolfman, they follow like the last serious Universal movie, which is not what you'd expect. Okay, and that's too much. That's too much of a digression. But yes, for Dracula, to beat Dracula, you've got to smash his coffins, and then you've got to hunt him down with holy items. But to beat the Wolfman, you've got to cure him, and to beat Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein, you have to do couples therapy.
Well, okay, well, let me ask this, Stu, as a expert in vampirism.
Mm-hmm.
Dracula's got these chests of earth from his homeland, right? Now, if he transforms somebody to a vampire in London, do they need to take, if they were to go somewhere, earth from the London area with them, or do they need that Transylvanian earth?
I would say, yeah. I think you have to take the earth from where you were buried. Yeah, you have to take essentially from your grave. So I see. I don't think it's just Transylvanian earth. I think it's the earth specifically from the crypt at the castle
where you're buried. So, and then how much earth do you need in your coffin to sleep in?
It's a movie. I don't know.
Asking for a friend.
What's that, Seth?
asking for a friend.
Well, here's my question. I mean, so these people, let's say they go around London destroying these chests of Romanian earth or Transylvanian earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not really destroying the earth. The earth will still be there. So the vampire could see it theoretically go back to the scene of the destruction with a broom and a dustpan, collect a quantity of it, and take it with him to his next secret place.
Well,
that's what they're using the consecrated host for, the blessed blood of bread of the sacrament. They sprinkle that in with the dirt to make it so that
that the dirt is consecrated or whatever.
Yeah,
I was thinking they just called the maids.
Yeah.
Or you can ship it to Nebraska. We can use it for filler soil. That'll work.
Huh.
Someplace. But yeah. That which does make for an interesting. And Bill, I like your thought process there, because I think that's what this film is symbolic of. This film and Renfield, which was released earlier this year.
Yeah.
You can take just little slices of these classic works and say, there's a whole darn movie in here.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a whole movie just on this. Years ago, there was a movie called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. And it's just taking these two extremely minor characters from Hamlet and building a film around these two guys that have like 5 minutes of screen time of stage time in the play. And you can absolutely do that, and it's wonderful how you can do that, especially which is a subject near and dear to my heart, is this idea of public domain works. When you get these classic works, you can take them, you can make them your own. Great poet C.S. Lewis had a great phrase: immature poets imitate, mature poets steal.
Mm-hmm.
And which sounds just funny, but
so are mature poets sort of the equivalent today of AI?
No, that's not really, because it's still recognizable. But by mature poet, what Lewis meant was they take something that's existing and they change it and they transform it so much that by the time it's done, you're not imitating anymore. You've made it your own, but you've taken this spark. It's like you've lit your candle on an older flame, but now it's your candle now, and now it's your flame. That's intertextuality, and you can make some really good works on that. I'm glad that this film got made. It had a nice budget. It was the production is wonderful. The ship, it looks like you're on a ship. It's very realistic. I think it's very very period true. Some people were calling out the main character is because they've obviously hung all these new characters on the plot, because the characterization in the novel is very sparse. What ends up being the main character is sort of I want to call him kind of the Rick Grimes of this movie.
Right.
Is a doctor educated at Oxford or Cambridge?
I can't remember, one of the two.
Yeah,
Cambridge.
Cambridge educated doctor who somehow has found himself stuck in Bulgaria, which is the closest port to Transylvania. That's why they ship out of Bulgaria. And he's just working this ship so he can get back to London and resume his career, because going to Bulgaria didn't work out real well for him.
Mm-hmm.
And people have been calling that, saying that this doctor is played by a black man. His race is only alluded to a couple of times in the film, which is good. It was not intrusive. And there are some wags who have called this out, saying like, "Oh yeah, black doctor in 1890s Britain, that'll be the day." No, that Cambridge was graduating a number of black physicians.
Yeah. And I think it was called out in the film. The reason that he was not in London was the fact that it was easy enough to get a degree, but to find employment was the problem. As soon as they found out that he wasn't white, they suddenly didn't need the doctor's services anymore. And so he ended up having to leave to go in search of employment in the field that he wanted to work in. So, so I thought that was explained pretty well. And it's good to know that was actually based in reality, based on what you said there. So
yeah. To get back to our Nebraska ties here, one of the, I think it was I'll jestingly say yes. Seth probably knows more about this than I do, but the the first black guy to play football for the University of Nebraska was a guy named George Flippin. And
why would I know more about this?
Because I'm joking.
Okay.
Yes, I tended to engage Seth about a football player named George Blanda on one of our trips one time, and Seth was looking at me like, "Stu, you are smoking some serious." Anyway, but yeah, one of the first people to play, black guys to play football for the University of Nebraska, ended up becoming becoming a physician. Ended up serving as the town doctor in this little town this Swedish town of Stromsburg, Nebraska, and had practiced there for years. And so it's not things that we look at and say, well, yeah, they would have done that. Yes, they did. There are these stories that are subversive, that are part of our history, and it's good that it got it's got a little press. It got a little bit of public notice here. I was glad to see that.
Yeah. So, Stu, if they would have managed to scuttle the Demeter, would that have, in your mind, been the end of Dracula?
That's a good question.
Because all his soil would have been sunk, and he's a long way from Transylvania, certainly more than a day's flight, assuming he could take bat form, right, and fly himself back. But if it's more than, because they were several days out to sea,
right,
you'd have to assume it would be a several-day journey, and he couldn't fly during the day because the sun would be up. So where's he going to sleep at night if he doesn't have a casket with his soil in it?
Right.
So,
well,
yeah, I think that would either effectively do it, or you'd have it. Seth, you have something to say, sir.
Yeah, I would like. It depends on if not having soil from his native home is like that would kill him, or just prevent him from resting and healing and having full access to his powers. Because I mean, vampires don't need to breathe, so he could just stay underwater the whole time if he wanted.
Yeah, that's true.
Swim back.
Well, either that, Bill, or he just seal himself into the coffin. If you look at, now I'm grafting mythologies here, but if you read the second Anne Rice novel, The Vampire Lestat, that is something that actually happens to vampires quite often. I guess at some point in their long existence, they hit this ennui where they just they basically commit sort of a halfway vampire suicide, and they'll just go into their coffin and they'll stay there for decades. And they'll just until something finally, will rouse them, where they just get so sick of it, they're saying, I'm just going underground, I'm just going to stay there. And if you graft that on Dracula, I could see something like that, where he just existed in this chest at the bottom of the sea for ever, until Robert Ballard or this fella who died going after the Titanic recently, came after him and said,
Oh man, that would be an interesting movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. To raise the Demeter, go down there and try and snag Dracula out of the ocean.
So I was kind of thinking of a little different movie, kind of along those lines, but it's a horror it's a comedy horror movie where it's more comedy than anything, and we start off with Dracula killing the last person on the Demeter, only to realize he's still out in the middle of the fucking ocean. And he doesn't know how to sail the goddamn ship.
Well, he was in this episode. They actually talked about that, and the fact that he was rationing the supply of people in order to make it all the way to London. So he wasn't just haphazardly just killing people when he felt like it. He was doing it methodically. There'd be a period of days that would go by before the next one would go, and they finally figured out. Once they figured out it was this malevolent creature that was feeding off of them, that he's rationing us, because at the rate at which he's depleting people, we'll run through the last person right as we pull into port in London.
Right. Which is the way that it ends up going in the novel. I mean, where it's a slow creeping doom. I mean, it's kind of like a reverse cannibalism, where it's like the Donner Party, where they keep running lower and lower and lower on supplies until they have to make this ultimate decision to be made. In Last Voyage of the Demeter, they are the supplies.
Yeah, and I think that adds a certain element of terror to it as well, because now not only is there this malevolent creature on board, but it's not just a mindless killing beast. It's actually a sentient thing that's planning out the fact that it's going to go through the entire crew by the time you get to London. And that based on its plan, you are not going to survive if you don't take some action and do something. So I thought that was really good too, the way they did that.
Yeah. One thing that disappointed me a little bit, perhaps it shouldn't, because I'm a huge fan of Nosferatu. Yeah. But if they gave the Dracula this demonic form, in the movie, when I really expected him to look more human, to look more like Christopher Lee or something like that.
I did too.
But they had their creative decision to make, and I can see that where they basically didn't want anybody to have to play Dracula. They said, we'll just make him a creature, which makes sense. I mean, sometimes you want to keep your monster in this. You want to make him like Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Where you don't get into the character. He's
not relatable.
Yeah, he's just scary.
Yeah.
That's all he is scary. And speaking of scary, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, but I understand that Linda and some other companions that you folks saw the film with were rather physically impressed by this movie.
Yeah, Linda and Katie both said it was very stressful. Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, it was probably one of, and it's weird because you would think with the way they made him look, I could easily in my mind say this is all fake, but it's just the way the movie went. I was on the edge of my seat. It was like disturbing. The whole dang movie was disturbing enough that I question, I know this is not a real story, but they just portrayed it so that you are feel like you're right there.
Yeah, it kept the anxiety level up during the whole show because you never knew when he was going to pop out.
Right. Well, and it's not just that. And again, it's not just the way, I think it's the small environment of that ship. They portrayed that ship really well, and you felt like you had nowhere to go. And it was only a matter of time before.
Well, and a lot of the areas of the ship were very claustrophobic. The hallways were very tight and claustrophobic, and the cabins weren't that big. And even the hold, although the hold was very good size itself, there were so many crates of dirt in there and other things that they were hauling that they really had to work to navigate their way around through all of that massive bunch of stuff. And that in and of itself was horrifying because you don't know as you're navigating through these canyons of boxes and supplies, are you going to round the corner and there's going to be Dracula waiting for you? Or if you do stumble upon him and maybe you wake him up, are you going to be able to navigate your way out quick enough before he can get you? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was quite quite the anxiety-ridden
disturbing
adventure. Yeah. So,
I call it disturbing entertainment.
Yeah, but both Katie and Linda really liked it. But Katie said it's the only movie she's ever seen that the whole time she was filled with anxiety or trepidation over the whole thing. She goes, it was almost exhausting.
Yeah, it was.
Was there a Renfield character in this movie, or
no?
No, none of the other.
I think, doesn't he make Renfield when he gets to London?
Yeah. We'll see it in the. That's a good question because in the film, Renfield is on the boat the entire time in the 1931 movie. Mm-hmm. Renfield's on the boat the whole time. This is more like the novel though, where there are no other characters on the boat. This film is to the Dracula canon really as what was the name of it? I can't remember the name. The Star Wars 3.9, the movie that's just the immediate prequel to New Hope. Came out 3 years ago.
Rogue One.
Rogue One. Thank you. This is basically the Rogue One of the Dracula canon, because you don't have any of the familiar characters at all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it fits perfectly in the canon of the book. Yeah, because you can see this guy, if they made a sequel to this, which they probably will not, because it doesn't done that good of business. Because Linda and Bill, I understand you and your friends were the only people in the theater when you saw Renfield.
Yeah, but in all fairness, it had been out for several weeks before we went to see it, and we were seeing it like on a Sunday afternoon at 7:30. So it could have been the fact that it was Sunday night. It's the Sunday night when the week that kids are starting back to school.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I kind of figured, I expected there to be a few people in there, but then when we got in there and it was just us, then I started thinking, oh yeah, I guess it is. Kids are starting back to school tomorrow, and it is Sunday night at like 7:30. So
not really a kids movie anyway.
Well, yeah, true. So I figured parents are busy.
Come out of the theater either.
What's that, Seth?
Hey, wait, we didn't really see anyone come out of the theater.
Right, for any of the movies.
Yeah, but when we went, it was the same thing. It was my friend and I, and we were the only ones in the theater.
Huh.
Which was and theaters have shifted this odd model, because when we got our seats, because now they have this assigned seating in theaters, which is weird.
Yeah.
It looked like, well, a few tickets have been sold to this thing. There's some seats taken, so we picked out our seats. But then the actual movie started, and there was nobody there. I think it's because the theater's going to these subscription models now, where you pay X amount of money at the beginning of the year, and you can see as many as you want. So you had a few people who had already they got their tickets for the show, but they didn't attend.
Gotcha. Huh.
But yeah, we know that we were there on a Saturday night at 7:00 at the Exarban Cinema, which I guess is usually pretty well attended.
Yeah,
and
that's where we went and saw it too. So
yeah, and there was not a soul there except for my friend and I.
Huh, I'll be darned. Yeah, well, I really liked it, so I would
it was
seeing it.
It was a 2 thumbs up movie, and you're right. They left that sequel hook in there, which was fantastic. But it's a good. Will they actually do anything with it? I don't know. It's a good question. I could see maybe a Netflix or maybe an Amazon picking that up into some sort of limited series.
Yeah,
but you know what's interesting? I'm thinking just globally, and I know I've said this before, that you're taking just this one little sliver out of Dracula, making a whole movie out of it. I think that's really reminiscent of what they were doing with the MCU.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Star Trek series too, where you take just this very small aspect of this larger work.
Yeah,
we're going to make a whole show of it. Loki gets his own show.
Mm.
Gets her own show. And it's on the one hand, it's derivative. On the other hand, it's also encouraging because there is so much creativity going on there.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up unless anybody has any final comments.
Mm-hmm.
No? All right. Well, so the three of us that have seen it, we give it 2 thumbs up. Get out there and watch it. I'm going to try to pick it up for my collection because it'd be a good Halloween month movie watch on the veranda, I think. So, all right. Well, thank you all for tuning in and watching. We will see you next time. Until then, have a good week and stay off of any ships filled with cases of dirt from Transylvania.
Or if you find a bunch of cases of dirt on your ship and it's still daylight, maybe just toss them over the side. Save yourself some trouble.
There you go. I like it. All right, folks. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.